Hi, Kelly Ryan here. For those of you who don't know me, I am a registered holistic nutritionist and I specialize helping people work through signs and symptoms of aging through nutrition changes and lifestyle changes. Tonight I am going to speak with you about mental health, inflammation, and mood foods. So, mental health issues have a huge impact on society. There are so many factors involved in complex conditions like mental health issues. Science is actually just starting to unravel one of these factors, which is inflammation. Now, please realize that none of these tips or tricks or anything like that is a substitute for professional medical advice. If you have any mental health conditions or inflammation conditions, make sure you're being monitored regularly by a licensed healthcare professional. So what is inflammation? Well, lately inflammation has gotten a lot of bad press, and that's because it can become harmful. However, inflammation isn't always a bad thing, believe it or not. As in most areas of health, it's the balance that's important. Inflammation is actually a natural process that our body uses to protect against infections, irritants, and damage. Inflammation helps our bodies eliminate damaged cells and tissues and helps them to repair. It also helps to reduce the cause of the damage, for example, by fighting the infection. Inflammation that happens in a big way, but for a short period of time, can help the body to heal these injuries and infections. On the other hand, lower levels of inflammation that sometimes stick around longer than necessary are termed, this long-term chronic inflammation can actually cause damage over time. Often there are few, if any, signs or symptoms, and it's this chronic inflammation that's linked to many conditions including mental health, heart disease, and diabetes. Inflammation mostly comes from our immune system's response to infections and injuries. It also involves our blood vessels and other molecules. A few of these inflammatory molecules or markers can include free radicals, which you might also hear the word oxidants sometimes, cytokines, and C-reactive protein, which sometimes is referred to as CRP. From here on in, I'm just going to call them inflammatory markers, just, to keep it simple. So what are the links between inflammation and mental health? Well, there are many factors that are linked to suboptimal mental health. Only one of them is inflammation. Now, while there are many links between inflammation and mental health, it's not the only connection. Others include neurotransmitter issues such as serotonin and dopamine, reduction in growth factors such as brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and neuroendocrine issues such as chronically increased stress hormone levels. However, research shows that inflammation may be a factor for about 1/3 of the people with depression. This vlog is going to focus specifically on the links between inflammation and mental health. So link 1 is inflammation and mental health. First of all, some mental health issues are associated with increased inflammatory markers. For example, people with depression tend to have higher levels of some of these markers. In fact, some of the inflammatory markers found in the blood are actually known to reach the brain. Once upon a time, they thought that the brain and the body were two entirely separate entities. However, they now know that they work together. They are part of the same package, and they can affect each other. High levels of inflammation may also inhibit recovery in people who experience mental health symptoms. In fact, some researchers believe that levels of inflammation may actually be able to predict negative mental health outcomes. Now, while inflammation may be a part of the cause of mental health symptoms for some people, it can actually go in both directions. Mental health issues may also increase some of these inflammatory markers. Link number 2 is inflammatory illness and mental health. Inflammatory illness, like allergic or autoimmune diseases, as well as metabolic conditions such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity, are associated with higher rates of mental health symptoms. And this link also goes both ways. So people with mental health symptoms are more likely to get metabolic-related conditions. This link between mental health symptoms and metabolic conditions has led some researchers to coin the term mood metabolic syndrome. This is meant to reflect the fact that they're linked to each other, and also, again, these links can go both ways. So link number 3 is inflammatory medications and mental health. So people who take certain inflammatory medications are at an increased risk of developing mental health symptoms. On the other hand, some medications that are used to treat depression may reduce some of the inflammatory markers. Again, this isn't 100% of the case or anything like that, but it just shows risk or possibility. So link number 4 is inflammatory diets and mental health. So there's growing evidence that people who eat a high-quality diet tend to have a better sense of well-being and better mental health. This includes better moods and lower stress, and certain anti-inflammatory diets have lower rates of mental health issues. This also means that studies show links between unhealthy eating patterns and mental health issues. Inflammatory diets are also associated with higher rates of mental health symptoms. So foods and moods. The evidence for a link between what we eat and how we feel is fairly new. The first studies to be published on this were as recent as 2009. And this new area is called nutritional psychiatry. The relationships between food and mental health are complex, and we're just starting to understand them. So, what foods are associated with worse moods? These not-so-healthy dietary patterns include higher intakes of saturated fats and processed meats, refined sugars and starches, and fried and processed foods. And if anybody knows me, they know that I'm all about eating real, whole, natural, live foods and cutting down on sugars and cutting down on toxins and cutting down on the fake foods. People who eat this way tend to report, people who eat the not-so-healthy diet foods tend to report more health symptoms than those who eat a more health-promoting diet. And several recent studies consider poor eating habits to be a risk factor for some mental health issues. Not surprisingly, these not-so-healthy foods are also linked with higher inflammatory markers. And several studies show that improving the diet can reduce levels of some of these markers. In fact, some studies show that the higher the inflammatory factor of the diet, the higher the risk of the mental health issues. One dietary pattern that's been studied a lot is the Mediterranean diet, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this. It's not new. This diet includes a lot of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, fish, and olive oils. It also contains a lot of nutrients and fiber. Eating a Mediterranean-style diet is associated with lower levels of inflammatory markers and a reduced risk of mental health issues. This complex association between food and mental health can also go both ways. Mental health symptoms can also influence appetite and food choices. And it's likely that other factors such as obesity, exercise, food insecurity, the use of alcohol and tobacco are probably involved as well. So we don't exactly know how these eating patterns affect mental health. Inflammation is definitely one possibility. Nutrition can impact how our immune system functions, and this can affect levels of inflammation and mental health issues. It can also be through the effects of the nutrients themselves and even directly through the digestive system. So, what are better foods for better moods? In fact, it's not just associations. A clinical study recently found that when people start eating a healthy diet, they can actually reduce some of their mental health symptoms. This study is actually particularly interesting. If anybody wants to look into it, it's called the SMILES trial. So better nutrition for better moods. Is there something special in these foods that may help with moods? We know the brain needs enough of all essential nutrients in order to function properly, just like the rest of your body. And insufficient levels are linked with stress response and the immune response. So eating nutrient-dense foods is the best way to get nutrition. Foods are complex combinations of nutrients, and supplementing with individual nutrients is not the same as eating a healthy diet. Basically, when you're supplementing, what you're trying to do is get yourself back to balance if you need to supplement, so that then the nutrients in your food can hopefully take over. So let's go over a few key nutrients for better moods. Some really good nutrients to make sure you're getting are B vitamins, especially B6, B9, which is folic acid, and B12. And a lot of B vitamins you can get in leafy greens. Sometimes you'll find some in different meats, eggs, nuts and seeds, fish, those sorts of foods. Vitamin D, well, first of all, the best place to get vitamin D is from the sun. A short period of time, say 20 minutes outdoors, not completely covered up head to toe, because if the sun's not getting to you, it's not going to do its job. That's a really good way to get vitamin D. Now, unfortunately, if you live in places such as where I live, where you don't get a whole lot of sun, especially in the winter, it can be difficult. And there are other foods. There's a few foods, such as salmon and eggs, that do have vitamin D in them. Minerals, such as calcium and selenium. Selenium's in a lot of fatty fish. And calcium you'll find in a ton of places, such as leafy greens, oranges, flax seeds, almonds, oats. Omega-3s is another very important one, which again you can find in fish, flax seeds, some nuts and seeds. So you can certainly get a lot of these nutrients through your food. Another thing too is your lifestyle factors are very important. You really want to make sure that you're getting an adequate amount of exercise and an adequate amount of good quality sleep. So in conclusion, inflammation is one of several factors that is linked to mental health and mood issues. It may be a factor for up to 1/3 of the people who suffer from these. The link between inflammation and mental health issues is thought to go both ways. Inflammation can contribute to mental health and mood issues, and vice versa. Eating a nutrient-dense, anti-inflammatory diet and getting regular exercise and quality sleep can help to reduce inflammation and improve mental and overall health. It's an exciting area of research that will continue to answer more questions about this link. In the meantime, try eating a more health-promoting, anti-inflammatory diet and getting enough nutrients, exercise, and sleep. Again, I want to mention that none of these are a substitute for professional medical advice, and if you do have any of these conditions, please make sure you're being monitored regularly by a licensed healthcare professional. That's it for me tonight. If you have any comments, I would love it if you'd comment below. And take care, everybody. Stay healthy.